You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney, with experts and insiders on what you need to know in Northeast Ohio.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Three Things to Know podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Haney, and if you can't tell, I am very excited about our podcast topic this week. I feel a little bit like Andy Anderson in the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Let me tell you why. Bear with me. If you've not seen the movie, there's a scene at the beginning of the movie. Andy Anderson is a journalist. She works for a women's magazine. She's played by Kate Hudson. Love Kate Hudson. She's talking with her girlfriends about how she's busy that night. She says she has tickets, and she says she has tickets to only the most exhilarating and artistic display of athletic competition known to mankind. And her friend says, the Ice Capades are in town, and she says, no, the NBA Finals are in town, and she has tickets. And she's very excited about it. Now, I'm not talking about the NBA Finals, but I am talking about the 2021 NFL Draft, which is coming here to Cleveland this week. I can hardly believe it. I can hardly believe that the draft is coming here. I can hardly believe that I live here again when the draft is coming here because, as you may know, if you've been listening to this podcast, I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, but moved away for a while, LA, New York, came back. Now I'm living here, working for 3 News, WKYC, absolutely loving it, getting to cover the Browns, getting to cover the 2021 NFL Draft, getting to talk about it with you here today. It's going to be here April 30th, April 29th, 30th, and May 1st, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, this coming weekend. And truly, this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience for the draft to come to your city if you live in a city where there's a professional football team. Because if you think about it, I think Jay Crawford said this really well on What's New the other day. There are 32 NFL teams. So just assuming the NFL is even going city by city, which it certainly doesn't have to do, it could be at least 32 years, if not longer, before the draft comes back to Cleveland. That makes a lot of sense, right? And it's just a really exciting thing that happens. You know, I've never had the privilege of being at an NFL draft, but I've been reading on it. Obviously, we've been covering it a lot. There's all kinds of activities that'll be there. Lots of NFL experiences, relays, all kinds of that cool stuff. You know, not all that different from the kinds of things they have at the NFL experiences at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which I'm from Canton, so that's something that's been a huge part of my childhood. That's actually something, even when I wasn't living in the area, I would always come home for as often as I could when that happens in the summer, at the end of the summer down in Canton. So all that kind of stuff, very exciting. There's a big old stage going up downtown. That's where all the in-person stuff's going to happen. There'll be concerts. We know that Kings of Leon is the opening act, and the Black Pumas are performing on Friday. And then on Saturday, Machine Gun Kelly, Cleveland native, going to close things down when he performs there on the last day of the NFL Draft. Now, of course, this is going to be different than the NFL drafts we've seen in the past. Last year, it was all virtual. It basically happened out of NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell's basement, and it did have its charm. It did. Year before that, 2019, it was in Nashville, and they really kind of blew the roof off the thing. It was crazy how much just money it brought to the city, how many people came into Nashville. What an incredible experience it was. So this will be somewhere in between those things, of course, because we're still living in a world where we're dealing with COVID-19. I hate to bring up COVID-19 when it's not relevant, but it is super relevant here, so things are going to be different. There'll be lots of safety precautions and all of that good stuff. And at the end of this rodeo, we are going to end up with some new Cleveland Browns. And that brings me to who my guest is for us today. There's only one person to talk to about what's going to happen in respect to what it's going to look like and who we're going to end up with and what the Browns are going to do and who the top picks are going to be and where they're going to go and all of that good stuff. And that person is our sports director, our main sports anchor, the voice of the Cleveland Browns himself, Jim Donovan. So I'm going to bring him in right now. Jim, thank you for being here on the Three Things to Know podcast.
Good to be with you, Stephanie.
This is a very, very exciting time. We've got the NFL draft coming here to Cleveland. You know, it was virtual last year. It was a big to do in Nashville. You are fully immersed in this. What are some of the things that we can expect here to be, where are we going to fall in that range between the virtual and the Nashville experience here in Cleveland?
That's probably going to be the most interesting part about the whole thing, because the crowds, once they took it, Stephanie, out of New York City, where it was forever, and they took the draft on the road, it's been a huge booming success in Dallas, Philadelphia, Chicago, and then, of course, in Nashville, where the crowd numbers were like over 600,000 people. So when we won the bid finally to host the draft, I think we were envisioning, well, we'll even do better than Nashville. I mean, every city wanted to do better than the last city. But of course, we're in different times right now. So I think that the NFL really wants this to work. They want people there. They want a lot of people there. They want 100% capacity at their regular season games this year. They want full stadiums. And usually when they put their mind to it, they get what they want, the NFL does, because they're so well organized. So I think it's going to be very, very crowded. I think it's going to be very safe with all the protocols being adhered to. But I think it's a big weekend for the NFL and Cleveland, but really for the NFL, because they are stepping out and saying, we're really going to try and get back to as close a normal life as we possibly can. We're going to launch that with this draft. So I don't think we're going to hit the 600,000, but I think we'll be well represented.
Well, everyone who does come here, absolutely welcome in Cleveland. We're very excited to have them here. Do we know anything about what it's going to look like? We do know that some players will be here in person. In terms of what we're going to see on the stage, last year, of course, it was Roger Goodell in his basement. Are we going to see fist bumps, elbow taps, air high fives? What do you think?
I think we'll see masks, and I think we'll probably see, elbows crunching together, things like that, the new way, the new high five, so to speak. And we will see some of the players. There's no doubt they've all been invited. Some have opted not to do that. That has nothing to do with Cleveland if they have decided not to come. Stephanie, there's this kind of line that you fall into if you're going to be a first-round draft choice, and it's, you say to yourself, am I going to be a first-round draft choice? Do I want to be there? And what if I'm sitting around waiting and waiting and waiting? That can become embarrassing to a player if he's sitting there with a camera right in his face for hours and hours and he's not being selected. That happened a long time ago to Aaron Rodgers when he came out of Cal and he was waiting to be drafted. He's sitting in that green room at Radio City Music Hall for hours until finally in the late 20s, the Green Bay Packers picked him. And it happened to Brady Quinn when the Browns drafted him coming out of Notre Dame. He waited and waited, and the Browns finally, they traded up with Dallas in the 20s to get it. But those two guys became like sympathetic figures. So a lot of kids then said, hey, I don't want to be like that. Unless I know I'm going to be 1, 2, or 3, maybe I want to stay. But Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pick out of Clemson, quickly declared that he wasn't going to come. He wants to be at home. He's going to be at Clemson, as a matter of fact, where he played college football. He won't be there. But if you're an Alabama great player, it's going to be like a class reunion because all the great Crimson Tide players are coming. Mac Jones is coming. Patrick Surtain is coming. Christian Barkmore, the big defensive lineman, is going to come. Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, the wide receiver, best wide receiver in the class, he's going to come. So they have commitments from really 10 of the bigger name players already. Some might, jump in late, but that's where they are there. And I think it'll be very exciting for those guys.
Definitely an emotional time for them for sure. And, there was some conversation too. Some of the players last year did really enjoy being surrounded by their family in that home, in that intimate environment. So a lot to think about there. We are excited that we're going to get some of those big prospects here in Cleveland in person. Now, I know, Jim, you've probably checked out all of the draft guys. We know who's going to be here. Who do you think is going to be among those top 5 draft picks this year? There's the Buckeye in the mix too that's being talked about.
Yeah, Justin Fields is he's really maybe becoming one of the most intriguing players to be up on the draft board because some people have him going as high as number 2 to the New York Jets. And then there was that storyline a couple of weeks ago where people questioned his work ethic and that he was falling down in the first round of the draft. I think he's going to be a very, very high draft pick, the quarterback from Ohio State. I think he is the new style of quarterback in the NFL because he's an athlete who plays quarterback. I mean, he can do it all. He can run, he can throw, he can elude pass rush. He plays at a very, very high level. And there are more people now in the NFL playing that style of offense, and they need that style of quarterback. It used to be that you were timid to bring a quarterback like that into the NFL. And the first thing you would say to that kind of a player is, hey, how about if you want to become a wide receiver instead of being a quarterback? And that's not happening anymore because of players like Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield to some extent, and certainly Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. I mean, he's really changed the whole atmosphere for an athletic player like that to play quarterback. So Justin Fields, Mac Jones, the quarterback from Alabama, is in there. You take a look at some of the other players that are coming in. The kid from the quarterback Trey Lance from North Dakota State, another fascinating player who didn't play at a big-time college program and only played one game last year and then opted out because of COVID-19. So those quarterbacks probably will be the headliners, I think, in the early part of the round on Thursday night, the first round.
Well, something to be said for certainly being rested going into potentially your first NFL year, right?
Yeah.
So we know the Browns have the number 26 pick in round 1. What do you think? Is that going to stay the same? Do we see them trading up or down or anything with that?
Well, this is a pretty assertive front office. So when they identify a player that they want, and I mean they are that specific, and we've seen it happen in free agency and even in the draft. I mean, last year, the Browns knew they needed a left tackle going into the draft, and they had the number 10 pick. And they definitely wanted Jedrick Wills. They identified Jedrick Wills. And so, that's the guy they went directly to and ended up getting him. And now they're set at left tackle for a long time because he played exceedingly well last year in his rookie season. So I would say this, if they identify a player that they want, and if they feel that they have to go get him, they kind of have the draft ammunition that would be needed to move out of 26 and go up. Now, it can be expensive depending upon how high you want to go up. But what they would do is they would take that number 26 pick, they would put that in a trade parcel, and they also have multiple picks in the 3rd round and in the 4th round, which are kind of enticing to a lot of NFL teams. They like that area of the draft. You can end up with some good players. There's a lot of value there. So they could package that together and move up and use some of those extra picks. They have 9 picks coming into the draft. And Stephanie, they're not going to need 9 players out of this draft. They're not at that level where they would need that amount of players. So they could move up, or they could just let the draft kind of fall to them. What will happen is they'll watch a trend as the draft names start coming off the board. And if they see that, the players that they like, a small group probably of players that they could use, and if they feel they're safe at number 26, then I think they'll stay there. But if they have an appetite to go up, I think they certainly have shown in the past they would do it. And I think they have the draft capital to do it too.
Imagining they do stay at the number 26, what time do we think that's going to happen? I mean, the first day of the draft, that could be a long day, especially if you're a player waiting to get picked, like you were just saying. Any guesses on when that might happen, just time frame wise?
So each team will get 10 minutes in between their picks. So once you go on the clock, you have 10 minutes to submit the name of the player that you're going to select. So if we're doing the math, and I was never good at math, but if we're doing the math, I think you start to open the windows, Stephanie, probably at 10:30. We're going to have a wait. This is going to be very unique for all of us here in Cleveland. I mean, usually we're 5 minutes into the draft and we've already made a pick, and then we're making our next pick 5 minutes later. But when you go 11-5 and you're picking 26, you have to wait. That's a good thing. So I think anywhere in between 10:30 and 11 o'clock would probably be the time that the Browns, if they stay at number 26, would be handing in the name of the player that they're selecting.
Now, in this free agency period, we've seen the Browns be very aggressive with the defensive line. What do you think it's going to look like with that number 1 pick? Do you have any idea where they might go with that?
So if it's me, and this is just me, and the Browns keep their cards pretty close to their chest on what they're going to do. And you're right, they've done an amazing job this offseason in rebuilding that defense like they did the year before when they rebuilt the offense. And they've gotten a lot of work done. But if it's me, I look at one area, and it's cornerback. And I just don't know if the Browns have enough at that position right now to be where they're going to need to be. Now, people will say, Stephanie, well, they've got Denzel Ward on one side, and they have Greedy Williams coming back from injury on the other side. But here's something to consider. In each season that Denzel Ward has played, he's missed time because of injury. Last year, he had a calf injury. He had COVID. His rookie year, he had concussion. His second year, he had a bit of a problem during the middle of the season in his second season. So he's missed time. When he misses time, that's a big problem. But you have to take the data there and say, he's prone to getting hurt. Are we going to get a 16-game season out of him? Maybe we need some more help at cornerback. On the other side, you got to remember Greedy Williams didn't play at all last year. He was injured in training camp with a nerve injury in his shoulder. And you just don't know if he's going to come back and be the player that you want him to be, at least right away. Maybe he's going to grow into it. That's why I would go and take a look at a cornerback for the Browns. Because, first of all, in the NFL these days, everybody's throwing, and they're throwing a lot. And at times you need 5 defensive backs on the field. Sometimes you need 6. And there were times last season, as good as the year was, where the Browns would walk into a game and they would really be taking defensive backs off their practice squad to play in big games. And I don't think they want to leave themselves that way going into this season. I think they think they're going to be very good. Why not get some insurance, get some help at cornerback?
Seems like at number 26, it's probably not super likely that their pick will be here in Cleveland, but man, would that be cool if they were here in Cleveland and up on that stage and putting on that Browns hat. That'd be something great to see.
That guy would own the town. You're right, for that particular period of time. He would own it for a couple of minutes.
He absolutely would. Now, I know you mentioned the Browns have 9 picks total this draft. The Browns don't need 9 players. Like you said, what do you think we'll see with the rest of those picks after round 1?
So I really think that at some point they'll go back offensively. And I think the Browns probably, like most NFL teams do when they go into any NFL draft, they say, at some point, let's get a young offensive lineman. And you have to remember that the Browns could be getting a little bit, they have a great offensive line, don't get me wrong, could be getting a little bit long in the tooth in the middle of their offensive line. J.C. Tretter, their great center. Joel Bitonio is starting to get a little bit older. And, Wyatt Teller is going to be a free agent after this season, and they're going to have to make a determination on what they want to do at that spot. He gave them a great year last year. So I would think the Browns would at least go and get a young offensive lineman at some point in the draft. They'll get a couple of defensive backs, like we just talked about, maybe at 26, but certainly later in the draft, I think they're going to get some young defensive backs. I would think the Browns will probably, and it could be early, but it could be in the middle rounds too, would get some linebacker help. I know a lot of people think the Browns in the first round could go for a linebacker, and they could, but I think on the other side, I think the Browns like their linebackers right now that they have. They're pretty young. They're very talented. There's a lot of upside. And the other thing people have to remember, in the Browns' new way they want to play defensively, they're really only going to play 2 linebackers at a time for a bulk of the plays that the defense is going to be on the field. So, I mean, the numbers would tell you that I think they'll get linebackers. I don't know how early they'll get them. And I think at some point the Browns are going to probably go and get a wide receiver, maybe 1, maybe 2. Last year, the Browns did big in the 6th round when they took the kid from Michigan, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who played very well. And I think they expect big things out of him. So I would think they would go for a wide receiver at some point. And then you have to wonder if the Browns will look at a running back at some point too, because Kareem Hunt will be in the last year of his contract, and we're waiting what I would think presumably would be a big deal at some point soon for Nick Chubb to sign.
Yes, and that is my next question for you. Okay, a big talk in free agency was, what is signing these people going to do with the money that's available for these contract extensions? You know, Baker Mayfield's eligible, Nick Chubb, Ward. Does what happens in the draft have any impact on what happens there?
I don't think so. I think I think those players are so big in the Browns' plans that the Browns have planned and, put aside a strategy to get them under contract and to keep them around here for a long period of time. As far as Mayfield is concerned, I think that I would think Stephanie, maybe by July, he probably would get, his big contract, which would be, it's going to be big. I mean, it will be very, very big for him. So I don't think it's just guaranteeing his 5th year. I think they want to get it done. I would think they sign him to a long-term deal, maybe by the start of training camp in July. The Nick Chubb one is important because running backs, a lot of people say you don't commit a lot of years and a ton of money to running backs because they get hurt. But this is a very special guy who has gotten hurt. I mean, he had a bad injury in college. He had a knee injury last year that cost him 4.5 games. But he's a very special player. He is, as much as people say Mayfield is the face of the organization, I think inside the locker room, a lot of people say Nick Chubb's the face of the organization because he is a coach's dream. The way he plays, the way he acts, the professionalism of how he rubs off on his teammates, and how unselfish he is on the field with whatever role he has, as big as it is or as small as it is in a particular game. I mean, they love that. He's an important part of the team. It's hard to put a price tag on it. I'm sure they will. He'll be a must sign, though, for the Browns. Denzel Ward will be a guy I'm sure that they take a look at, and they look at the durability factor with him. But he was the number 4 overall pick when he came out. I think he's a cornerstone to their defense. So I think they get the deal done there. This is going to be expensive for the Browns. The tough part is when you get good, it's hard to hold on to all of the players, that made you good.
And that is a position that we are not used to being in. Talking about Chubb, I can't tell you how many times I was yelling at my TV, give the ball to Chubb.
Absolutely.
This season, because he just gets it done, man. He just gets it done every time. It's so great to see. After all this time, as a lifelong Browns fan myself, being from Canton area, I don't want to see any of them go. I don't want to take any chances.
You're right. Absolutely. It's been a long wait. I mean, really. And so this is what's happening. That's kind of cool because it was so painful when we went through it. But this is the other side of going 1-15 and 0-16, because you end up, at the top of the draft. And when you finally start making the right picks with those high picks, it's great to have the picks, but if you blow the picks, it's a mess. Johnny Manziel and, people like that. But when you finally hit on these picks, you're right. I mean, it's just, they become family, and you don't want to see anyone leave the family.
You sure don't, but it is really nice to see. I don't mind waiting until number 26 this season. It's great not to have that number 1 pick for sure. Like you said, that is a good thing. We'll just be patient. I got one more question for you before we go, Jim. Covering these drafts for all these years, obviously the picks, the analysis, all that good stuff. With it being here in Cleveland, is there anything especially that you're looking forward to about it this year?
Well, I just think, I hope that, the city just, we do so well, and we take it so seriously when we host events like this, and not just sports events. But when we hosted the Republican convention and when we host other things, I mean, everybody really puts their best foot forward to welcome people into the city and to have a good time. Now, I don't know how many people are coming in from outside because of the COVID situation, but I still assume that a lot of people will be here because of the love of football. So I think what I hope comes out and is translated around the globe, because it's such a global event, is the tradition of the city with the Browns, how great it is to have the Browns back relevant again in the NFL. They're a great part of the NFL landscape, and certainly a great part, and they occupy a lot of the pages in the history of the NFL in a really good way and in a unique way. To lose the team and be able to fight and get them back with a huge community push to make that happen. So I hope that the tradition of Cleveland, and I know the city will be all spiffed up and look fine, and I think that the setting will be great, but I hope that really what comes out is, wow, that town really loves football. That's a special area.
I hope so too, and we couldn't ask for a better spot for it either, right on the North Coast Harbor, tucked between the stadium and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, all that good stuff. It's going to be great. I can't wait for it. Jim, thank you so much for sharing your insight today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good being with you.
I absolutely love getting Jim's insight on this. Of course, the voice of the Browns, like I said, no one better to ask about these things. And it's just such a true point that he makes about the passion for the city that we have here in Cleveland, the passion for football that we have here in Cleveland, in the Northeast Ohio area, all of that good stuff. And I'll tell you what, I am just very excited to be in the downtown vicinity and feel that energy of the people coming in, of the prospects who are here, who are hoping to get drafted. Their lives are about to change. It's all very exciting. And there's a lot for people to take advantage of here too, whether you live here in Northeast Ohio or you're coming in from out of town and maybe you couldn't get into all of the draft experience things you wanted to get into. But really, so much to offer here. They've got those really cool football installations happening down at the mall. The area is called the Mall. It's right on Lakeside, and it's overlooking where First Energy Stadium is and all that good stuff. And that brings me to what you need to know in NEO this week. The draft stage, where this is all going down, it's tucked between First Energy Stadium, behind the Great Lakes Science Center, and by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, what you need to know in NEO is that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has a very special pro football Super Bowl halftime show exhibit happening. And it's called The Biggest Show on Turf, 55 Years of Halftime Shows. And I'm just kind of realizing that that's a pun. The biggest show on turf, kind of like the biggest show on earth. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to call it a pun because you all know I really love my bad puns. So this is presented by Pepsi, and it's going to have all kinds of props and artifacts from Super Bowl halftime show histories. And it's open now. It'll be open through September, by the way. So if you do want to avoid what might be kind of a crowd because of all the people who will be here, again, we don't know how many people are going to come to Cleveland, but some people will certainly come to Cleveland for this, for sure. It'll be open through September. But the other things that will be going on at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame include on Thursday, April 29th, they'll have the Rock Hall open to NFL guests as part of the red carpet experience. And there will also be extended hours at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on Friday, April 30th, and Saturday, May 1st, the second and third days of the NFL draft. But, just a couple of the things that we know will be on display at that halftime show exhibit. They're going to have Left Shark from when Katy Perry performed at the Super Bowl. There'll be all kinds of sort of schematics and a look behind the scenes at the different set displays that people had done, their different stage designs for the Super Bowl halftime shows. And again, of course, most recently, The Weeknd performed in the latest Super Bowl. They'll have lots of displays there related to his Hall of Infinity mirrors, that sort of created all of those memes that everyone was sharing about what it looks like when you turn on your phone and you accidentally turn on your reverse cam and all of that good stuff. Tons of stuff. They'll have that turquoise suit that Prince wore when he performed at the Super Bowl halftime show. It's going to be incredible. So, like I said, you need to know about this in NEO. And now let's talk about this week's A Good Follow. This is a person that I just recently happened upon. His name is Zach Frydenlund. He goes by Chopz. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. He's a former Clevelander. He's one of us. He is the deputy editor of Complex Sports. He's the co-host of the Complex Sports podcast, and he loves the Cleveland Browns, especially Baker Mayfield. So he's a good follow on Twitter. His Twitter handle is pchops with a Z _, which I also have a special place in my heart for people who have an underscore in their Twitter handle because, as you may know, my Twitter handle is _Stephanie Haney. I swear one day I'm going to get in touch with Stephanie Haney with no underscore, and we're going to talk this through, and we're going to see if we can't come to some kind of an agreement so I can get that Twitter handle. But in the meantime, I digress. A good follow this week is pchops with a Z _, PCHOPZ _. It's Zach Frydenlund of Complex Sports. If you don't believe me that he's a Cleveland Browns sports lover, and why wouldn't you believe me? But anyway, his pinned tweet says that he would really love to do a Browns-only podcast. He's already hosting a podcast. He put that up, I think, in February. So what I'm saying to you, Chopz, is maybe let's collab, because I think that sounds like a lot of fun. His latest tweets are about what the Browns will do with the number 26 draft pick in round 1, and he's also calling for the Browns to take on the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football in Week 1. By the way, we know now that the NFL is releasing the 2021 season schedule on May 12th, so we will be eagerly watching for that. I'm sure that Chopz will have some things to say about that. And reminder, we have 9 home games this year for the Cleveland Browns because the NFL added that 17th regular season game. And this year, for us, that extra game is a home game. Oh, so much goodness. I love it. I'm so excited about it. So a good follow, Chopz with a Z _ on Twitter. You won't be disappointed. If you love the Cleveland Browns, if you love the NFL, if you love sports, definitely a good one to add to your feed. Okay, that's it for 3 things to know this week. Thank you so much for being here. This was a fun one for me. If you can't tell, I have been missing my Cleveland Browns talk. I'm really excited about the NFL draft being here. I hope you get to go out and experience some of it. Of course, we're going to have all kinds of stuff on WKYC.com and all that good stuff, so make sure you stick with us there, because if you can't be there in person, we'll be doing the best that we can to really bring that experience to you as much as possible at home. And if you like the show this week, please share it with your friends, leave a rating, leave a review, subscribe if you haven't done it already. And if you have some thoughts, send me a DM, _Stephanie Haney. I really want to hear what you're thinking about things, what you want to talk about, what you want to hear about, who are the experts and insiders that you want me to bring on the show, and I will promise you this, I will do my darndest to track them down. Okay, I will see you back here next week, everybody. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Stephanie Haney.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.